So what we have planned for this presentation is kind of a brief overview of AnyLogic ecosystem. So you've been hearing about AnyLogic Model Manager or AnyLogic Cloud. You experience AnyLogic 9 and its built-in model editor into the browser. So today we wanted to kind of walk you through around our existing ecosystem and how you can leverage all the tools that you have available to you as they are right now. So the plan is for me to talk about the simulation software, simulation model lifecycle, a little bit about our ecosystem and enterprise simulation. Then Jeff will do a demonstration of a new exciting feature that we are going to add to AnyLogic Cloud, which is the optimization experiment on servers. And at the end, Nikolai will walk us through the roadmap for AnyLogic Cloud. OK, let's get started. Simulation lifecycle. So we are all familiar with model creation. We are all here because we have this love for creating models. And most of it is abstracting from reality into digital representations of those realities. And we are all familiar with all the things that goes into this process. It's an iterative process. It's fascinating. It's interesting. But simulation also has another side to it in its life cycle, which is use or when the model is deployed and the stakeholders actually get access to the models. Honestly, as Andre mentioned, traditionally this part is being kind of ignored, mostly due to the lack of technology or the limitations of the simulation technology in that sense. So most of us were working in our own laptops and workstations, building models, running experiments, and then handing out a report to the stakeholders to get executed. But as we see into the overall trend in all sorts of industries, we are moving toward digital transformation. And that means that using models in a more, let's say, tactical or operational level and having kind of demanding access for all the stakeholders becomes more and more prevalent. So that is why we focused heavily to make sure that type of that side of the simulation lifecycle is going to be accessible to you as well. And this is a kind of a graphic of some of the kind of most important or prominent features that were added to AnyLogic 7 and 8. As you see in AnyLogic 7, majority of our focus into making sure you have more tools for model creation more access and merging all the methodologies into this coherent umbrella of model building tools. As you see, AnyLogic 8, with the experience that we had from having kind of running models on websites with the Run the Model website, if you remember those, this is like decades ago. So we knew that we need to move into that direction, and this was a pretty forward-looking project. So we started working on AnyLogic probably a decade ago, and this AnyLogic Cloud and AnyLogic 8 has been on the market for the past 6 years. So it's a pretty mature ecosystem and has been deployed by many of our customers. And as you see, we created many features to enhance its capability toward enterprise use over the years. So it has a variety of tool set that captures majority of you kind of expect as an enterprise level software. OK, and if you wanted to take a look at the same kind of transition and also see the life cycle of a model at the same time, this is what it looks like. I'm sure most of you have used AnyLogic Model Manager. You definitely used it yesterday with AnyLogic 9. But in case you kind of haven't thought about it recently, at the moment, the way this workflow works is that you have a desktop AnyLogic application, and you create your models there. You can run them, you can run experiments, and then if you want to deploy them, you can upload them to the model manager. So you can have a team of modelers that upload these models to the model manager, and then you, as part of the core team, has access to this powerful, centralized server-based execution platform to run your experiments, and you also can give access to the end users. And these end users do not require any license or any installation of any sort. They only need a browser, like what you did yesterday with AnyLogic 9. So they just get access to the model, they are authorized to have access to this server, and they can run experiments that the modeler team actually created for them. Okay. One kind of interesting thing that you have access now, because of the access that you have to AnyLogic 9, you also have access to this workflow. So if you want, for the next month with the user pass that you have, you can actually build models in AnyLogic 8, upload it to the account that you have, and test this workflow. So this is also available aside from AnyLogic 9, and it gives you full access to the capabilities of the model manager, and even API access if you want to try that side of it. Okay, one major shift that happens as part of having this type of ecosystem is now you can create models and create on-demand access to the models, which takes us to the next type of application. Again, we are hearing this term digital twin all the time. It means different things for each individual that you talk to, but what we are talking about here, is the way we prefer to explain it in our context, is calling it simulation-based digital twin. For us, we are all familiar with models, so we know what they can do and how they work, so it's not that much different from what we already do. I would say that there are two main differences between a regular simulation and what we call simulation-based digital twin, is that first, they are available on demand, and all the stakeholders have access to them, so they can run them whenever they want. So it's not sitting isolated in somebody's laptop. And the second thing is, they probably have deep integration with some form of data input. It could be real time or near real time. So whenever you run these models, they are capable of getting feedback from the real system and actually initialize themselves with the realistic or near real kind of representation of the reality at that point. And what you see on the screen is when you establish connection between the actual digital version and the reality, then you can establish these cycles or feedback loops that the state of the real system can be passed to the simulation, and you run different experiments. It could be anything that you use for kind of prescriptive analysis of your models, and the feedback goes back to the person or the automated system that initiated this run. And that could be happening in cycles. So depending on how many cycles you kind of initiate this and run these loops, you can call it operational, tactical. It's different based on your specific use case. But what you see on the screen is completely possible with the ecosystem that we currently have. So you can create models with great levels of details, establish connection with external databases, APIs, or IoT devices, and run these digital twins on demand on AnyLogic Cloud. This is what is available today. And as I said, the great news is you have access to the entire software stack with the the credentials that you have access to. Okay, so this is the kind of the definition of what we call simulation-based digital twin, but we also see this turn into a larger or kind of a more comprehensive thought process about how to go toward digital transformation at enterprise. So creating a digital twin of a specific unit of a business is interesting, but it becomes more and more interesting to higher level management when they can see their entire business on a control tower. And that is what leads to this type of simulation, which are getting lots of attention. And just to make sure that this is, you can call this digital twin as well, but we tend to call it enterprise simulation to distinguish between the two. And the difference is that this is not just one digital twin. These are a set of digital twins, and each one represents one unit of the enterprise. And the great thing about this way of thinking, and that's why most managers think this way, is they know that if they create models of one of these units, they have the tendency to have lots of overlap with the others. So it's not like that you create one and you have to start from scratch. There are lots of opportunities to basically create these models on scale and have many or a set of digital twins that represents the entire business. So again, this is something that is happening with AnyLogic ecosystem. We actually have a couple of presentations today that our existing customers are showcasing how they leverage this thought process at scale on the infrastructure that we have. So that's all I had. So next is moving to what we kind of discussed yesterday as well. So we know that the genetic optimization is available in AnyLogic Desktop. It's already been released in the previous build, and now we have that available, or we are going to have it available in AnyLogic Cloud as well. So it's a very kind of natural way of doing optimization at scale when you have more power on a server. So let's, and what we are going to see is that Jeff is going to show you a demo of this MPV version of this, capability added to the a specific build that he has access to, and this will be released soon. So let's actually see this demo. Okay.
Thank you, Rash. So to begin, I want to introduce the model that we'll be referencing and working with for this demonstration. Many of you may be familiar with it as one of our example models, the activity-based costing analysis. In particular, it is a production facility or manufacturing site where we are analyzing the cost that goes into this production cycle. And we have the ability to change the parameters and inputs to try to minimize that number as best we can, but we don't have enough time for me to try every permutation. So what we usually utilize is an optimization engine. In this case, in the software, you guys are probably familiar with this. We set the objective function, which in this case is minimizing that total cost per product, as well as setting the parameters that we would like the optimization engine to play around with. And in this particular model, we also care about ensuring this requirement that the queue for first resource at the end of the run is left empty, essentially. So next steps will show how we prepare this model to be uploaded and run optimization in the private cloud. So with every simulation model, you have this run configuration. This is essentially the AnyLogic Cloud preparation page, where you have the ability to set the model inputs you want available, as well as outputs. Inputs being parameter objects, outputs essentially anything from the analysis library. But in this particular case, what we are required to do is add two specific output objects that we'll be utilizing for this optimization experiment. So instead of just referencing that line of code, or we just have done the same thing inside of an output object for both our objective function as well as our requirement. So I already have all of this set up for us, so let's upload it. Gonna export, gonna choose to create a new model. For now, I won't provide public access. Let's choose an icon, click Next, finish. As you can see, it navigates me to the uploaded model where you have the ability to run this experiment either through animation or through, did not like those built-in parameters. Let's get started on how we get this optimization experiment ready. So to begin, I just need to click New Experiment. We're going to choose Simulation Type. We're just going to do Normal Optimization. Give it some meaningful name. Just call it Opt for now. And then we do have a next few steps. In particular, we need to recreate the experimentation side of the optimization, but for the cloud. So I'm going to edit the dashboard here, and we need to change these values from slider and edit boxes to varied and range, because we want this to be discrete for these top two, and then continuous range, because they are doubles for the bottom. Now, the extra thing I would like to do is make visible, as you can see the requirements here show up on the bottom. It essentially extracts all of our output objects. What we care about is that remaining queue space. Now, when I first uploaded this model, it took these two output objects and just displayed them in this section here, but I want to perform a few more steps. So in this particular case, what I would like to do, optimized inputs. So for anyone who's ever worked with this tool before, whenever you add an output is typically objects from that just the output section. But for the optimization experiment, you also have the ability to choose your inputs such that when the experiment is finished, I want displayed what the chosen or optimized values will be. So we just need one more object here. So we're going to choose all of those parameters. And we don't necessarily need to see this value, because we know the requirements are going to be met. And now we can save dashboard. So I just need to run the experiment. Before I do that, I just need to set up these inputs. So just give me a moment here. And once again, I'm replicating the same exact experiment that I had locally on the software. So 1 to 20. Apologies. Forgot my cheat sheet.
So as you can see, everything that Jeff is doing is through the browser. So he is using all of these editing tools that are available to you on the AnyLogic Cloud. And this is the same for all other experiments as well. So you actually tried this yesterday at the end of the experiment, the model that Andre created, and you created the experiment. It is the same workflow for everything, and the nice thing is you don't need any coding. You just uploaded the model. You can modify and customize your interface to the way you like, and you have a custom dashboard.
In this particular case, we just need to set our objective function, which is minimize that total cost of product. And we want to add the restriction less than equal to 0. And then we hit run. So while this is running, a few things to note of how the AnyLogic Cloud operates is that anytime a model is uploaded and any type of experiment or configuration of an experiment is ran, the AnyLogic Cloud will save its results. So essentially, not only is it performing this optimization experiment, but going to be saving all of these different combinations of parameters that it's trying, such that even it's available for other experiments that you might run.
Other experiments, including optimization too.
Yes.
So if you wanted to run it with different configuration, all the runs that you already executed are saved, the input-output, so it doesn't need to repeat those. So it kind of, you can do this in a cumulative way and reuse all the previous runs to gain insight into exploration of new things that you haven't run before.
Thank you. So now that the experiment is finished, we can just see these outputs already. We are very pleased with that number that we see. and we can take a look at these optimized inputs. But in particular, what I actually want to look at is that this particular experiment, or optimized values, being run. So as you can see, when I hit play on that experiment page, it took all of those values and loaded them to the model, and now I can view it with animation. Please note that's the value at the end of the experiment, if you're wondering why that's different. A few other things to take note of. There are different experiments or different use cases of the optimization available. In one particular case, you also have the ability to run optimization with replications. As you can see, I've already performed this, and what it essentially does here is it maps it to this chart where I can highlight one of these options where it said, this particular case, here's the chosen parameters and what their total output was. Another use case, for example, was for use of calibration. AnyLogic Private Cloud also does allow you the ability to use files as input. So for example, you could calibrate to historical data that's inside of an Excel file that essentially is parameterized, and you could try out all different types of historical scenarios to calibrate to the desired one.
Okay, so
Maybe
let's
that's
go
it.
through. Yeah, so I think you had a slide as well, right?
Mm-hmm. So, a few things to take note of. This will be coming in the next version of 2.4. I've already kind of discussed the two experiments that will be available, optimization and optimization with replications. And at the moment, this is pretty basic functionality. It's just single objective. You can use any number of decision variables and requirements as well. And as I demonstrated to everybody, the best solution will always be shown or played with animation at the end if you'd like.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So next is a brief overview of the future roadmap of AnyLogic Cloud.
Thank you, Arash. So this was our optimization MVP, and we will continue improving it based on the feedback we receive. We'll probably add, we'll add the API for that experiment, and we also consider it in constraints functionality, because currently we only have requirements there, and this will be the next year plans. Also, regarding the version 2.4, we will also work on a private cloud, improve help improve communication with support by adding a script which will allow our users to gather some detailed information, diagnostics from the cloud. So it will be better now, and also we'll work on security and minor bug fixes. Okay, and this optimization, actually, it was in a coming soon status since 2017, and the last year on the AnyLogic conference, we promised we'll release all runs functionality. So we decided to reschedule this, and we changed all runs to the optimization. And now, regarding all runs view, this functionality will be delivered in the next year. The order these features come is subject to our plan, and all runs view is the overall view on all the data, inputs and outputs pairs stored in the AnyLogic Model Manager database, and some flexible tools allowing to view that data and download the results, sort, filter, and etc. Also, we work on a AnyLogic Private Cloud regarding the requests of enterprise clients. We'll add more ways for authentication, like maybe OAuth or SAML or something like that. Protocols. We'll add support of Podman tool for containerization. So it will come along with Docker we currently have, and that will be a choice in between, because some users would like to use Podman, which is a daemonless architecture. So we have several plans for the next year. We'll continue our development.
Thank you so much, Nikola. So that's all we had for this session. Thank you for your attention, and we are ready for the questions. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question about the model manager. When you run the experiment and you say that everything gets saved, so if you upload a newer version of your model and then you try to run it with the same configuration, will that pick up the previous run, or will overwrite what you have before? Or how does that work? Because you don't want to build the whole dashboard again on the newer version, right? So how does that work there?
So AnyLogic Cloud Model Manager will consider a new model version, just like a new model, because there might be something changed inside, and so there will be all the runs will be again empty, and once you run them, they will be stored, and you can compare run results in between several versions. So you may run the experiments with the same input values and compare different versions.
So you do not lose the previous runs, but if you upload a new model, although you see it in the same view in the same workspace, it's treated it as a new model. So all the new runs are separate from the previous versions.
And AnyLogic Model Manager, once it receives the new model version, it will try to migrate all these experiment dashboards to the new version. But the data should be new, actually. So you need to run all these experiments.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm pretty new to AnyLogic, and I'm wondering what the difference is between this optimization MVP compared to the old optimization that was included.
So the one that I showed yesterday was running locally on my laptop. This is running remotely on a server. So you can scale it with the computational power of a server. Whatever you do locally is kind of limited with what you have access to locally. And there are other benefits that comes with a model that you have on a server. For example, you can share it with somebody else. So if you wanted to send this optimization experiment to a colleague and say you can try your own inputs on set different boundaries and run it again, you can do that. But with the local one, it's harder to do that.
And if you decide to increase the number of iterations which should be performed during optimization, AnyLogic Model Manager will reuse all the already done runs, and the optimization will advance faster.
You also have one extra ability within Model Manager. Due to it saving all the results, you can also export them to either an Excel file or a JSON file, such that you can share the results with anyone outside of Model Manager if you'd like.
Speaking of files to be downloaded, can we get a slightly different file format for those of us who want to put that through a data processing pipeline? I was like, oh yeah, I want to see what the file format of this is like. I'm just going to put it through an ETL system. And I went, oh my gosh, oh no, everything's in key value format in different sheets. I can't do this. Can we get a wide table?
So are you talking about the Excel file? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but you can write to file in a custom way for yourself. Yeah.
It gives you the ability to write to Excel files. You don't have to use the built-in one. You can have your own customized sort of data writing, writing to a database. It also does automatically collect a JSON file as well. So you essentially have the ability to customize that file writing as much as you'd like. If you could do it locally, you could do it in
Yes.
Model Manager.
On server. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you so much for your attention and time. Thank you.